Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter as he navigated through the bustling city streets. His eyes darted between the road and the rearview mirror, where he could see his employer, Gregory Pearson, frowning at his phone. The tension in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Marcus, you incompetent fool!" Pearson's voice boomed from the back seat. "We're going to be late for my meeting. Can't you drive any faster?" Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself that he needed this job. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pearson, but there's heavy traffic. I'm doing my best to find a quicker route." Pearson scoffed. "Your best? If this is your best, I should have fired you years ago." The word stung, but Marcus had grown accustomed to Pearson's verbal abuse over the years. He focused on the road, trying to tune out the stream of insults flowing from the back seat. As they pulled up to a red light, Marcus noticed an elderly woman struggling with her groceries on the sidewalk. Without thinking, he rolled down his window. "Ma'am, do you need any help?" Before the woman could respond, Pearson's voice cut through the air like a whip. "What do you think you're doing? We don't have time for your bleeding heart nonsense. Driver." Marcus quickly rolled up the window, his cheeks burning with shame. He caught the woman's startled expression in the side mirror as they sped away. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence, broken only by Pearson's occasional grunts of disapproval. When they finally arrived at the towering skyscraper that housed Pearson's company, the businessman stormed out of the car without a word. Marcus slumped in his seat, exhausted. He wondered, not for the first time, why he continued to subject himself to this treatment. The pay was good, but was it worth the daily humiliation? As he was lost in thought, a sharp rap on the window made him jump. It was Pearson, looking even more agitated than usual. "What are you doing just sitting there? I need you to pick up my dry cleaning and then meet me at the country club at 3 p.m. sharp. Don't be late, or it'll be your job on the line." Before Marcus could respond, Pearson was gone, swallowed up by the revolving doors of the building. With a heavy sigh, Marcus started the engine and pulled away from the curb. He had a few hours before he needed to be at the country club, so he decided to take care of some personal errands first. At the bank, Marcus stood in line, his mind wandering to happier times. He remembered when he first started working for Pearson, how excited he had been to land a job with such a prestigious businessman. Back then, Pearson had been demanding but not cruel. When had things changed? "Next." The teller's voice snapped Marcus back to reality. As he approached the counter, he noticed the teller's name tag, Emily. She smiled warmly at him, a stark contrast to the cold treatment he was used to receiving from Pearson. "How can I help you today, sir?" Emily asked. Marcus found himself smiling back. "I'd like to make a deposit, please." As Emily processed his transaction, Marcus couldn't help but notice how her kindness made him feel. It was a reminder that not everyone in the world was like Pearson. "Here you go, Mr. Thompson," Emily said, handing him his receipt. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Marcus shook his head. "No, thank you. You've been very helpful." As he turned to leave, Emily called out, "Have a wonderful day, Mr. Thompson." The simple gesture of kindness nearly brought tears to Marcus's eyes. He left the bank feeling a little lighter, a little more hopeful. His next stop was the dry cleaners. As he waited for Pearson's suits, Marcus struck up a conversation with the owner, an elderly man named Mr. Chen. "You work for Mr. Pearson, yes?" Mr. Chen asked as he carefully bagged the expensive suits. Marcus nodded. "For the past 5 years." Mr. Chen's eyes twinkled with sympathy. "He is not an easy man, I think. But you are always kind, always patient. That is a rare quality these days." Marcus was taken aback by Mr. Chen's words. He had never considered patience a virtue, merely a necessity for dealing with Pearson. But hearing it described as a positive trait made him see himself in a new light. As he left the dry cleaners, Marcus checked his watch. He had just enough time to make it to the country club. He loaded the suits into the car and set off, his mind still turning over Mr. Chen's words. The drive to the country club was uneventful, but as Marcus pulled up to the entrance, he noticed something odd. Pearson was standing outside, looking confused and agitated. He was arguing with one of the valets, his face red with anger. Marcus quickly parked the car and rushed over. "Mr. Pearson, is everything all right?" Pearson whirled on him, eyes blazing. "Where have you been? I've been waiting here for hours." Marcus frowned, checking his watch again. "Sir, it's only 2:55. You told me to meet you here at 3 p.m. "Nonsense," Pearson shouted. "I specifically told you noon. Are you calling me a liar?" The valet looked uncomfortable, clearly not wanting to get involved. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mr. Pearson, I assure you, you said 3 p.m. I would never be late for an appointment." For a moment, Pearson looked uncertain. Then his face hardened again. "Well, it doesn't matter now. The meeting is over. Thanks to your incompetence, I've missed a crucial deal. I should fire you on the spot." Marcus felt a flash of anger, but he pushed it down. Something wasn't right here. Pearson had always been harsh, but he'd never been this irrational before. "I'm sorry you missed your meeting, sir," Marcus said carefully. "Would you like me to drive you home now?" Pearson stared at him for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "Yes, fine. Let's go." As they drove back to Pearson's mansion, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Pearson was uncharacteristically quiet in the back seat, staring out the window with a lost expression. When they arrived at the house, Pearson got out of the car without a word. Marcus watched him walk up to the front door, fumble with his keys for a moment, then disappear inside. Marcus sat in the driveway for a few minutes, torn between concern and relief at being done for the day. Finally, he started the engine and headed home, his mind racing with questions. Little did he know this was just the beginning of a series of events that would change both his and Pearson's lives forever. "Marcus." Pearson's voice crackled through the car's intercom. "Where are you taking me? This isn't the way to the office." Marcus frowned, glancing at the rearview mirror. "Mr. Pearson, we're heading to your home. You just left the country club, remember?" Marcus's frown deepened as he watched Pearson's confusion play out in the rearview mirror. The older man's brow furrowed, his eyes darting around as if trying to piece together a puzzle. "The country club? What are you talking about? We were just at the office," Pearson insisted, his voice tinged with frustration and a hint of fear. Marcus pulled the car over to the side of the road, his heart racing. He turned to face his employer, speaking as calmly as he could. "Mr. Pearson, we were at the country club just a few minutes ago. You had a meeting there, remember?" Pearson's face cycled through a range of emotions: anger, confusion, and finally, a flicker of vulnerability that Marcus had never seen before. I don't understand," Pearson muttered, more to himself than to Marcus. For a moment, the two men sat in silence, the tension in the car palpable. Marcus watched as Pearson seemed to gather himself, his usual mask of arrogance sliding back into place. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Pearson snapped. "Take me home, if that's where we're going." The rest of the drive passed in uncomfortable silence. When they arrived at Pearson's sprawling mansion, Marcus helped his employer out of the car, noticing how Pearson's hand trembled slightly as he gripped Marcus's arm for support. "Will you need me tomorrow, sir?" Marcus asked as they reached the front door. Pearson paused, his hand on the doorknob. For a split second, Marcus thought he saw a flash of fear in the older man's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Of course I'll need you," Pearson growled. "Be here at 7 a.m. sharp." With that, he disappeared into the house, leaving Marcus standing alone in the gathering dusk. Over the next few weeks, Marcus noticed more and more inconsistencies in Pearson's behavior. The businessman would forget important meetings, struggle to recall the names of longtime associates, and sometimes even get lost in his own office building. One particularly bad day, Pearson flew into a rage when he couldn't find an important contract. He tore apart his office, scattering papers everywhere and hurling accusations at his bewildered staff. "Which one of you incompetent fools moved my papers?" he roared, his face red with anger. Marcus, who had been summoned to the office, watched the scene unfold with growing concern. He noticed Pearson's assistant, Sarah, looking particularly distressed. As Pearson continued his tirade, Marcus quietly approached Sarah. "Has this been happening a lot?" he whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with worry. "It's getting worse," she murmured. "He's been forgetting things, getting confused. I'm scared, Marcus. I don't know what to do." Before Marcus could respond, Pearson's voice cut through the room. "You, Marcus, what are you whispering about over there? Are you plotting against me too?" Marcus turned to face his employer, his mind racing. He had to do something, but what? "Mr. Pearson," he said carefully, "I think I might know where the contract is. Why don't we look for it together?" Pearson glared at him suspiciously but nodded. As they searched the office, Marcus gently guided Pearson through his own filing system, pretending to discover the contract exactly where it was supposed to be. "See, sir? It was right here all along," Marcus said, handing over the document. Pearson snatched the contract, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, Marcus thought he saw a flicker of recognition, of understanding in the older man's gaze. But then it was gone, replaced by Pearson's usual scowl. "Well, it's about time someone around here showed some competence," Pearson grumbled. "Everyone else, get back to work." As the staff scurried out, Marcus lingered. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Pearson?" Pearson waved him away. No, just be ready to drive me home later." Marcus nodded and left the office, his mind whirling. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong with Pearson. The mood swings, the forgetfulness, the confusion. It all pointed to something more than just stress or age. That night, after dropping Pearson off at home, Marcus stayed up late, researching on his laptop. He read about various conditions that could cause memory loss and personality changes in older adults. As he scrolled through medical websites, one word kept appearing: Alzheimer's. The more Marcus read, the more convinced he became that this could be what was happening to Pearson. But how could he be sure? And more importantly, what should he do about it? The next morning, Marcus arrived at Pearson's mansion earlier than usual. He found his employer in the study, looking uncharacteristically disheveled and confused. "Mr. Pearson," Marcus called softly, "are you ready to go?" Pearson looked up, his eyes unfocused. "Go where? Who are you?" Marcus felt his heart sink. He stepped into the room, speaking gently. "I'm Marcus, sir, your driver. We have a meeting at the office this morning, remember?" Recognition slowly dawned on Pearson's face. "Marcus, yes, of course. I was just testing you, making sure you were paying attention." As Marcus helped Pearson get ready for the day, he couldn't help but notice how vulnerable the once formidable businessman looked. The harsh lines of his face seemed softer somehow, his eyes less sharp. In the car, Pearson was unusually quiet. Marcus kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching as his employer stared out the window with a lost expression. Finally, Marcus couldn't keep silent any longer. "Mr. Pearson," he began hesitantly, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right? You seem different lately." Pearson's head snapped around, his eyes suddenly fierce. "What are you implying? That I'm losing my touch? That I can't handle my own business?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter, choosing his words carefully. "Not at all, sir. I'm just concerned. If there's anything I can do to help—" "Help?" Pearson scoffed. "What could you possibly do to help? You're just a driver, for God's sake." The words stung, but Marcus pressed on. "Sometimes, sir, it helps to talk to someone who's not involved in your business dealings. If you ever need an ear—" Pearson fell silent, and for a moment Marcus thought he'd overstepped. But then, to his surprise, Pearson spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared, Marcus." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus waited, hardly daring to breathe. Pearson continued, his voice shaky. I think something's wrong with me. I can't remember things. I get confused. I feel like I'm losing control and I don't know how to stop it." Marcus pulled the car over to the side of the road. He turned to face Pearson, seeing not the tyrannical boss he'd known for years, but a frightened old man grappling with his own mortality. "Mr. Pearson," Marcus said gently, "I think it might be time to see a doctor. Whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone." Pearson looked at Marcus, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. You won't tell anyone about this, will you? If word gets out, my competitors will eat me alive." Marcus shook his head. "Your secret is safe with me, sir. But please, let me help you get the care you need." For a long moment, Pearson said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "All right, Marcus. I'll see a doctor. But you have to promise me something." "Anything, sir," Marcus replied. Pearson leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Promise me you'll stay. No matter what happens, I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows me, who can remind me who I am when I forget." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. Despite years of harsh treatment, he found himself moved by Pearson's vulnerability. "I promise, Mr. Pearson. I'll be here for as long as you need me." As they pulled back onto the road, heading not to the office but to the hospital, Marcus realized that everything had changed. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond just being a driver. He glanced at Pearson in the rearview mirror, seeing not his boss, but a fellow human being in need of compassion and support. Whatever came next, they would face it together. "Marcus," Pearson's voice broke the silence, "I need to ask you something important." Marcus nodded, his eyes on the road. "Of course, Mr. Pearson, what is it?" Pearson took a deep breath, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his suit jacket. If the doctors confirm what we both suspect, I need to know that my affairs will be in order. That someone I trust will be there to make decisions when I can't." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel, the weight of Pearson's words sinking in. He glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting his employer's anxious gaze. "Mr. Pearson, are you asking me to be my guardian?" "Yes," Pearson finished, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know it's a lot to ask, especially given our history, but you're the only one I trust, Marcus. The only one who's seen me at my worst and still stuck around." The car fell silent as Marcus processed this unexpected request. His mind raced through years of verbal abuse, impossible demands, and sleepless nights spent questioning his own worth. Yet, beneath it all, there had always been a grudging respect between them, a complex relationship forged through years of shared experiences. As they pulled into the hospital parking lot, Marcus made his decision. "Mr. Pearson," he said, turning to face the older man, "I would be honored to help you in any way I can, but are you sure this is what you want? Surely there are family members or business associates who might be better suited?" Pearson shook his head vehemently. "No, Marcus, my family is scattered, more interested in their inheritance than my well-being. And my business associates? They'd tear my empire apart the moment they sensed weakness. You're the only one who's shown genuine concern for me as a person, not just a wallet or a stepping stone." Marcus nodded slowly, the gravity of the situation settling over him like a heavy blanket. "All right, Mr. Pearson, if that's what you want, I'll do it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we need to talk to the doctors and see what we're dealing with." As they walked into the hospital, Pearson's usual confident stride was replaced by a tentative shuffle. Marcus found himself instinctively offering his arm for support, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just days ago. The next few hours passed in a blur of tests, questions, and tense waiting. Marcus sat in the sterile waiting room, his mind wandering to the strange turn his life had taken. He thought about the years of abuse he'd endured, the countless times he'd considered quitting. Now, here he was, potentially about to become responsible for the very man who had made his life so difficult. Finally, a doctor emerged, her face serious. "Mr. Pearson, we have your results." Marcus stood, ready to leave and give Pearson privacy, but the older man gripped his arm. "Stay," Pearson whispered, his voice trembling. "Please." Inside the doctor's office, the diagnosis fell like a hammer blow: early-onset Alzheimer's disease. As the doctor explained the prognosis and treatment options, Marcus watched Pearson's face crumple. Years of carefully constructed arrogance melting away to reveal raw human vulnerability. How long do I have?" Pearson asked, his voice barely audible. The doctor's eyes were kind but direct. "With proper treatment and care, many patients maintain a good quality of life for several years. But Mr. Pearson, I must stress that this is a progressive disease. It's crucial that you start putting affairs in order and consider your long-term care options." As they left the hospital, the world seemed different somehow. The bustling city streets, once a source of constant stress and deadlines for Pearson, now felt like a confusing maze. Marcus guided his employer gently to the car, hyper-aware of every obstacle, every potential danger. Once inside the vehicle, Pearson broke down. Decades of pent-up emotion poured out in heaving sobs that shook his entire frame. Marcus, unsure of what to do, simply sat quietly, offering his presence as silent support. When the tears finally subsided, Pearson looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I've been a bastard, haven't I, Marcus?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He opened his mouth to offer a polite denial, but Pearson waved him off. "Don't lie to me, not now. I know how I've treated you, how I've treated everyone. I thought it made me strong, made me respected. But now..." He trailed off, staring out the window at the city he'd once dominated. Marcus chose his words carefully. "You've been demanding, Mr. Pearson, but you've also built an empire, provided jobs for thousands. That counts for something." Pearson snorted, a shadow of his old self flickering across his face. "Jobs, wealth. What good is any of it now? I can't take it with me, and soon I won't even remember I had it." They drove in silence for a while, the weight of the diagnosis hanging heavy between them. As they neared Pearson's mansion, the older man spoke again, his voice stronger. "I meant what I said earlier, Marcus. I want you to be my guardian when the time comes. But more than that, I want your help now. Help me make things right while I still can." Marcus nodded slowly, a plan already forming in his mind. "All right, Mr. Pearson, where do you want to start?" Over the next few weeks, Marcus watched in amazement as Gregory Pearson underwent a transformation. The man who had once been known as the most cutthroat developer in the city now threw himself into philanthropic efforts with the same intensity he'd once reserved for hostile takeovers. They visited homeless shelters that Pearson had once tried to shut down, now armed with checks and promises of support. They toured underfunded schools in neighborhoods where Pearson had once planned luxury condos, pledging resources and scholarships. At each stop, Marcus watched as Pearson engaged with people he would have previously ignored or disdained. He saw genuine smiles replace the old sneer, heard warmth creep into the voice that had once only barked orders. One afternoon, as they left a community center where Pearson had just announced a major donation, Marcus couldn't help but comment, "This is quite a change, Mr. Pearson. May I ask what prompted it?" Pearson was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "I always thought I'd have time, Marcus. Time to enjoy my wealth, time to mend fences, time to leave a legacy beyond just buildings and bank accounts. Now that time is running out, I realize what really matters." He turned to Marcus, his eyes clear and focused in a way they hadn't been since the diagnosis. "I can't undo the harm I've done, to you or to others, but I can try to balance the scales a bit before I'm not myself anymore." Marcus nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I think you're doing a fine job of it, sir." As the weeks turned into months, Marcus found his role evolving. He was no longer just a driver, but a confidant, an advisor, and increasingly, a caretaker. He helped Pearson navigate the complex legal and financial arrangements necessary to protect his assets and ensure his wishes were carried out. There were good days and bad days. On the good days, Pearson was sharp, focused, almost his old self, but tempered now with kindness and humility. On the bad days, confusion reigned, and Marcus had to gently remind Pearson of who he was and what they were doing. Throughout it all, their relationship deepened into something neither man had expected: friendship. The barriers of class and position that had once seemed so insurmountable melted away in the face of their shared journey. One evening, as they sat in Pearson's study reviewing documents, the older man looked up with a wry smile. "You know, Marcus, I used to think I had you all figured out. The quiet, obedient driver. I never imagined there was so much more to you." Marcus returned the smile. "To be fair, sir, I never imagined there was more to you either. I guess we've both learned a lot." Pearson nodded, his expression turning serious. "I need you to promise me something, Marcus. When the time comes, when I'm not me anymore, I need you to remember this version of me, the man I'm trying to be now, not the man I was before." Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. "I promise, Mr. Pearson. I'll remember." As night fell outside the study windows, the two men continued their work, no longer employer and employee, but partners in a race against time, striving to create a legacy of compassion from the ashes of arrogance. "Marcus," Pearson said, his voice cutting through the quiet of the study, "there's something else we need to discuss." Marcus looked up from the pile of documents he'd been organizing. "What is it, Mr. Pearson?" Pearson leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. "It's about the company. I've been thinking. It's time for a change in leadership." Marcus felt his breath catch. He'd been wondering how long Pearson could maintain his grip on the business given his condition. "Sir, are you sure? The doctor said you still have time before I become a drooling mess," Pearson finished, a hint of his old sharpness creeping into his voice. "I'm aware, Marcus, but I'd rather step down while I can still make the decision myself. The question is, who should take over?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Surely one of your executives," Pearson waved his hand dismissively. "They're all sharks, circling and waiting for me to show weakness. No, I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands what I'm trying to do with the company now." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication of Pearson's words sank in. Marcus felt his heart racing. Surely Pearson couldn't mean... "You want me to run the company?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Pearson nodded slowly. "You've shown more integrity and business acumen in the past few months than most of my board has in years. You understand my vision for a more ethical, community-focused company. And most importantly, I trust you." Marcus stood up, pacing the room as he tried to process this unexpected turn of events. "Mr. Pearson, I don't know what to say. I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. I'm a driver, not a CEO." Pearson's eyes twinkled with a hint of his old mischief. "And I'm living proof that being a CEO doesn't automatically make you a good person or a wise leader. You have something far more valuable than an MBA, Marcus. You have heart." Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself thrust into a crash course in corporate leadership. Pearson introduced him to key executives, walked him through the intricacies of the business, and began to include him in high-level meetings. The reactions from Pearson's inner circle were mixed. Some, seeing which way the wind was blowing, immediately began courting Marcus's favor. Others were openly hostile, viewing him as an interloper. One particularly tense meeting stood out in Marcus's memory. Pearson had just finished outlining a new initiative to invest in affordable housing, a complete reversal of the company's previous strategy. "This is madness," exploded Victor Reeves, the company's longtime CFO. "We're in the business of making money, not running charities. Gregory, you can't seriously be considering letting this chauffeur dictate company policy." The room fell silent, all eyes darting between Reeves, Pearson, and Marcus. For a moment, Marcus felt like he was back in the car, enduring one of Pearson's tirades. But then he saw something he'd never seen before. Pearson, rising to his defense. "That chauffeur, Victor, has shown more vision and humanity in the past month than you have in 20 years, Pearson said, his voice quiet but steely. "If you can't see the value in what we're proposing, perhaps it's time for you to explore other opportunities." Reeves sputtered, his face turning an alarming shade of red. But Pearson had already turned away, effectively dismissing him. As the meeting broke up, Pearson pulled Marcus aside. "You did well in there," he said. "Didn't let them see you sweat." Marcus let out a shaky breath. "On the inside, I was terrified." Pearson chuckled. "Good. A little fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it paralyze you." As the weeks turned into months, Marcus found himself growing more confident in his new role. He threw himself into learning every aspect of the business, often working late into the night. Pearson was always there, guiding, advising, but increasingly allowing Marcus to take the lead. The company's new direction began to attract attention. News outlets ran stories about the reformed robber baron and his unlikely protege. Community leaders who had once protested Pearson's developments now cautiously praised the company's new initiatives. But as the company flourished under its new ethos, Pearson's condition continued to deteriorate. There were more bad days now. Days when he would forget where he was or fail to recognize people he'd known for years. On one such day, Marcus found Pearson wandering the halls of the office, looking lost and confused. "Mr. Pearson," Marcus called gently. "Are you all right?" Pearson turned, his eyes clouded with confusion. I can't find my office. Everything looks different." Marcus's heart ached as he guided Pearson back to his office. "It's all right, sir. I'll help you." Once inside, Pearson sank into his chair, looking small and vulnerable. "I'm losing it, aren't I, Marcus?" Marcus knelt beside him, taking Pearson's trembling hand in his own. "You're having a bad day, that's all. Tomorrow will be better." Pearson shook his head, a moment of lucidity shining through the fog. "We both know that's not true. The bad days are outnumbering the good now. It's time, Marcus. Time for you to take over completely." Over the next few days, they worked together to finalize the transition. Legal documents were signed, press statements prepared. Through it all, Marcus marveled at Pearson's strength, his determination to see things through while he still could. The day of the official announcement arrived. The company's largest conference room was packed with employees, press, and community leaders. Marcus stood nervously at the podium, Pearson seated beside him. As Marcus began to speak, outlining the company's new direction and his role in it, he saw confusion creep into Pearson's eyes. By the time he finished his speech, Pearson was looking around the room with no recognition, clearly unsure of where he was or what was happening. Marcus's heart sank, but he knew what he had to do. Gently, he helped Pearson to his feet and guided him to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "Mr. Pearson would like to say a few words." For a moment, Pearson stared blankly at the crowd. Then, to Marcus's amazement, a spark of the old Gregory Pearson flickered to life. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life," Pearson began, his voice wavering but growing stronger with each word. "I've hurt people, destroyed communities, all in the name of profit. But standing here today, I can say that my greatest achievement isn't the buildings I've raised or the fortune I've amassed. It's finding someone who could see past my flaws and help me become a better person." He turned to Marcus, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you, my friend. Take care of them. Take care of our legacy." As applause filled the room, Pearson sagged against Marcus, the moment of clarity passing. Marcus supported him, guiding him from the podium with gentle hands. Later that evening, as Marcus helped Pearson prepare for bed, the older man looked up at him with clear eyes. "Did I do all right today?" he asked, a hint of his old insecurity showing through. Marcus smiled, feeling a lump form in his throat. "You did wonderfully, Mr. Pearson. I couldn't be prouder." Pearson nodded, satisfaction spreading across his face. "Good, that's good." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Marcus, I need you to promise me something." "Anything, sir," Marcus replied. "When I'm gone, really gone, not just confused, I want you to remember me like this, not as the tyrant I was, but as the man I'm trying to be now. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded, blinking back tears. "I promise, Mr. Pearson. I'll remember." As he turned out the lights and left Pearson's room, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had a legacy to protect now, not just a business empire, but the redemption story of a man who had found his humanity in the twilight of his life. Walking down the hallway, Marcus paused at a window, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, lives were already being changed by the work they'd begun together. It wouldn't erase the past, but it was a start. "We did it, Mr. Pearson," Marcus whispered to the night. "We're making a difference." As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Sarah, Pearson's former assistant, now a key member of Marcus's team. "Meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. to discuss the new community outreach program. Don't be late, boss." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head at the irony. From driver to CEO, from employee to friend, life had taken him on an unexpected journey. But as he thought about the work ahead, the lives they could change, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. With a deep breath, Marcus straightened his shoulders and headed for the elevator. Tomorrow was a new day, full of challenges and opportunities. And he was ready to face them all, carrying with him the lessons and legacy of Gregory Pearson. As the elevator doors closed, Marcus couldn't help but smile. "Look at us now, Mr. Pearson," he murmured. "Who would have thought?" The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office early, his mind already racing with ideas for the community outreach program. As he stepped off the elevator, he was greeted by an unexpected sight. "Mr. Pearson?" he called out, surprised. "What are you doing here so early?" Pearson turned at the sound of Marcus's voice, his eyes brightening with recognition. "Ah, Marcus, I had a moment of clarity this morning and wanted to make the most of it. I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Marcus smiled, touched by Pearson's enthusiasm. "Of course not, sir. It's always good to see you here." As they walked together towards the conference room, Marcus couldn't help but notice the way Pearson's eyes darted around, taking in the changes to the office. New motivational posters adorned the walls, featuring images of the company's community projects. The once sterile corporate atmosphere had been replaced with a warmer, more inviting ambiance. "You've really transformed this place," Pearson remarked, a hint of pride in his voice. "It feels different, better." Marcus nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for his mentor's approval. "We're trying to create an environment that reflects our new values. I hope you approve." Pearson chuckled, a sound that had once been rare but was becoming more frequent. "Approve? My boy, I'm thrilled. This is exactly what I hoped you'd do." As they entered the conference room, Sarah and the rest of the team were already assembled. There was a moment of surprise as they saw Pearson, followed by warm greetings and respectful nods. "Mr. Pearson has decided to join us for our meeting today," Marcus announced, pulling out a chair for his former boss. "I think his insight will be invaluable as we discuss our new outreach program." The meeting began, with team members presenting their ideas for community engagement. Marcus watched with pride as his staff outlined plans for job training programs, affordable housing initiatives, and partnerships with local schools. Throughout the presentation, Pearson remained attentive, occasionally asking insightful questions that showed his mind was still sharp, despite his condition. Marcus marveled at the change in the man who had once cared only for profit margins and hostile takeovers. As the meeting drew to a close, Pearson cleared his throat. "If I may," he began, his voice carrying a hint of its old authority, "I'd like to make a suggestion." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the former CEO. "What you're doing here is wonderful," Pearson continued, "but I think we can go further. Why not establish a foundation? We could set aside a significant portion of the company's profits to fund these initiatives long-term, ensuring they continue even when I'm no longer here." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat at Pearson's words. The idea was brilliant, a way to cement their new direction and create a lasting legacy. But more than that, it was a testament to how far Pearson had come, how much he had changed. "That's an excellent idea, Mr. Pearson," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, can you start looking into the legalities of setting up a foundation?" Sarah nodded, already scribbling notes. "Of course, I'll have a preliminary report by the end of the week." As the team filed out, energized by the new direction, Marcus and Pearson remained behind. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Pearson spoke. "You know, Marcus, when I first hired you, I never imagined we'd end up here." Marcus chuckled. "Believe me, sir, neither did I." Pearson's face grew serious. "I treated you terribly for years. I was a tyrant, not just to you, but to everyone around me. I thought it was the only way to succeed in business." He paused, his eyes growing distant. "But you showed me another way. You taught me that kindness isn't weakness, that compassion can be a strength. I just wish I had learned that lesson earlier." Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Pearson, But Pearson held up a hand, silencing him. "Let me finish, please, while I still can." He took a deep breath, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I know I don't have much time left. The good days are getting fewer and farther between. But I want you to know, Marcus, that I'm proud of you. Proud of what you've done with the company, proud of the man you've become. And I'm grateful. Grateful that you saw something in me worth saving, even when I couldn't see it myself." Marcus couldn't hold back his tears any longer. They flowed freely as he reached out, clasping Pearson's hand in his own. "Thank you, sir, for everything, for trusting me, for giving me this opportunity. I promise I'll do everything I can to honor your legacy." Pearson smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. "I know you will, my boy. I know you will." As they sat there, hand in hand, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led them both to a place of redemption and purpose. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Sarah poked her head in, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Marcus, the mayor's office is on the phone. They want to discuss the new affordable housing project." Marcus nodded, reluctantly releasing Pearson's hand. "I'll be right there." He turned back to his mentor. "Will you be all right, Mr. Pearson?" Pearson waved him off with a chuckle. "Go on, go change the world. I think I'll sit here for a while and enjoy the view." As Marcus left the room, he glanced back to see Pearson gazing out the window at the city skyline, a contented smile on his face. In that moment, Marcus vowed to himself that he would do everything in his power to make Pearson proud, to continue the work they had started together. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. The announcement of the Pearson Foundation caused a stir in the business world, with many praising the company's commitment to social responsibility. Marcus found himself juggling his responsibilities as CEO, with frequent media appearances and community events. Through it all, he made sure to keep Pearson involved as much as possible. On good days, Pearson would visit the office, offering advice and encouragement. On bad days, Marcus would visit him at home, reading him reports of the company's latest initiatives, even if Pearson couldn't always understand them. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus received a call from Pearson's caregiver. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice gentle but urgent, "I think you should come. Mr. Pearson is asking for you." Marcus rushed to Pearson's mansion, his heart racing. He found his mentor in bed, looking frail but alert. Pearson's face lit up as Marcus entered the room. "Ah, there you are," Pearson said, his voice weak but warm. "I was hoping to see you one last time." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Don't talk like that, Mr. Pearson. You're going to be fine." Pearson shook his head, a wry smile playing on his lips. "We both know that's not true, my boy, but it's all right. I'm ready." He gestured for Marcus to come closer, patting the bed beside him. As Marcus sat down, Pearson reached out, grasping his hand with surprising strength. "I want you to know," Pearson began, his voice barely above a whisper, "that you've made these last months the best of my life. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose, with compassion. You've given me a chance at redemption." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "You've given me so much more, sir. You've given me a chance to make a real difference in the world." Pearson nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "And you will, Marcus. You'll do great things. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," Marcus replied, without hesitation. "Don't forget to live," Pearson said, his voice growing fainter. "Don't get so caught up in the work that you forget to enjoy life. Find someone to share it with. Be happy." Marcus nodded, unable to speak through his tears. He sat with Pearson as the older man's breathing grew slower, shallower. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the bedroom window, Gregory Pearson took his final breath, a peaceful smile on his face. In the days that followed, Marcus threw himself into organizing a memorial service that would honor Pearson's legacy. The event drew hundreds of attendees, from business leaders to community members whose lives had been touched by the company's new initiatives. As Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a mix of grief and determination. Gregory Pearson was a complex man, he began. For much of his life, he was driven by profit and power. But in his final months, he showed us all the power of redemption, of second chances. He paused, taking a deep breath. He taught me that it's never too late to change, to make amends, to leave the world better than we found it. And that's the legacy I intend to carry forward. As he finished his speech, Marcus could almost hear Pearson's voice in his head, urging him on. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks, but he also knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. In the months and years that followed, Marcus continued to guide the company along the path he and Pearson had set. The Pearson Foundation grew, funding initiatives that touched thousands of lives. And through it all, Marcus never forgot the lessons he had learned from the unlikely friendship that had changed everything. Every morning as he walked into his office, Marcus would pause to look at a framed photo on his desk. It showed him and Pearson, taken on the day of the company's new direction announcement. In the picture, Pearson's arm was around Marcus's shoulders, both men smiling broadly at the camera. And every morning, Marcus would smile back, whispering a quiet promise to the man who had given him so much. "We're doing it, Mr. Pearson. We're making a difference. And I won't forget to live along the way." As Marcus settled into his chair, ready to face another day of challenges and opportunities, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that wherever Pearson was now, he was proud. And that was all the motivation Marcus needed to keep pushing forward, to keep striving to make the world a little bit better, one day at a time. Just then, there was a knock at his office door. Sarah poked her head in, a smile on her face. "Sorry to interrupt, boss, but there's someone here you might want to meet." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? Who's that?" Sarah's smile widened. "It's Emily, from the bank where you used to do your deposits. She's here about a potential partnership for our financial literacy program." Marcus felt a flutter of recognition at the name. Emily, the kind teller who had shown him a moment of warmth during his darker days as Pearson's driver. He smiled, remembering Pearson's words about not forgetting to live. "Send her in, please," he said, straightening his tie. As Emily walked into the office, Marcus was struck by how little she had changed. Her warm smile was just as he remembered it, a beacon of kindness in what had once been a very difficult world for him. "Mr. Thompson," Emily said, extending her hand. "It's wonderful to see you again. I almost didn't believe it when I heard about your incredible journey." Marcus shook her hand, feeling a spark of connection. "Please, call me Marcus, and thank you for coming. I'm excited to hear about this potential partnership." As they sat down to discuss the financial literacy program, Marcus found himself drawn not just to the proposal, but to Emily herself. Her passion for helping others, her insightful questions, and her genuine interest in the company's mission all resonated deeply with him. Their meeting stretched well beyond its scheduled time, evolving from a business discussion into a wide-ranging conversation about life, purpose, and the power of small kindnesses. Marcus found himself sharing stories about his time with Pearson, the lessons he'd learned, and his hopes for the future. "You know," Emily said, her eyes twinkling, "I always knew there was something special about you, even back when you were just making deposits at my window." Marcus chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "And I never forgot your kindness. It meant more than you could know, especially on the tough days." As their meeting drew to a close, Marcus felt a reluctance to let Emily leave. Acting on an impulse he couldn't quite explain, he heard himself asking, "Would you like to continue this discussion over dinner sometime?" Emily's smile brightened. "I'd love to." Over the next few months, Marcus found himself balancing his demanding role as CEO with a blossoming relationship with Emily. Their dinners became a regular occurrence, offering a welcome respite from the pressures of work and a chance to connect on a deeper level. Emily's perspective as someone who worked directly with people struggling financially added invaluable insight to the company's outreach programs. Her ideas helped shape new initiatives, making them more effective and accessible to those who needed them most. One evening, as they walked through a park near the office hand in hand, Marcus felt a sense of contentment he hadn't experienced in years. He thought back to Pearson's final words, urging him not to forget to live. "You know," he said, squeezing Emily's hand gently, "I think my old boss would have liked you." Emily raised an eyebrow. "The tyrannical Mr. Pearson? Somehow I doubt that." Marcus shook his head, smiling. "No, not that version of him. The man he became at the end. The one who taught me that it's never too late to change, to make amends, to find joy in helping others. They paused, looking out over the city skyline. In the distance, Marcus could see the community center they had recently opened, its lights glowing warmly in the twilight. "I wish you could have met him," Marcus continued. "He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he showed me that redemption is possible, that one person really can make a difference." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "I think I am meeting him in a way. Through you, through the work you're doing, his legacy lives on in every life you touch." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he whispered, "for understanding, for being part of this journey." As they stood there, the city stretching out before them, Marcus felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. He knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, that there would be setbacks and difficult decisions. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. With Emily by his side, with the team he had built, and with the memory of Pearson guiding him, Marcus felt ready to face whatever came next. He was living the life Pearson had urged him to embrace, finding balance between his mission to make a difference and his personal happiness. In the years that followed, the Pearson Foundation continued to grow and evolve. Marcus and Emily married, their partnership extending beyond their personal lives to their shared commitment to community service. Together, they expanded the company's initiatives, touching more lives and inspiring other businesses to follow their lead. Marcus never forgot where he came from. He made it a point to personally meet with new employees, especially those in entry-level positions. He shared his story openly, reminding everyone that potential for growth and change exists in unexpected places. On the 5th anniversary of Pearson's passing, Marcus stood once again before a gathering of employees, community leaders, and beneficiaries of the foundation's work. Emily sat in the front row, her encouraging smile giving him strength. 5 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady and clear, we embarked on a journey of transformation. We set out to prove that a business could be successful not just in terms of profit, but in its positive impact on the world. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before him. I stand here today not just as your CEO, but as someone who has lived the very change we seek to create. I was once a driver, subjected to daily humiliation and disrespect. But through an unexpected turn of events, I was given an opportunity to make a difference. Marcus's eyes found the portrait of Pearson hanging on the wall, the old man's kind eyes seeming to twinkle with approval. Gregory Pearson taught me that it's never too late to change course, to right our wrongs, to find purpose in serving others. His journey from a cutthroat businessman to a champion of social responsibility is a testament to the power of redemption. He gestured to the screens behind him, which began to show images of the various projects the foundation had undertaken. Affordable housing complexes, job training centers, scholarships for underprivileged students. But this isn't just about what we've accomplished, Marcus continued. It's about what we will continue to do. Every life we touch, every community we help rebuild, every person we inspire to believe in second chances. That is Gregory Pearson's true legacy, and it's a legacy I am honored to carry forward with all of you. As applause filled the room, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. He thought about the long, often difficult journey that had brought him to this moment, from a frustrated driver to a leader committed to making a difference. Later that evening, as Marcus and Emily walked hand in hand through the very park where Pearson had once planned to build luxury condos, now a thriving community green space, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. You know, he said, squeezing Emily's hand gently, sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. There are days when I expect to wake up and find myself back behind the wheel, enduring another one of Pearson's tirades. Emily chuckled softly. But you're not that person anymore, Marcus. And neither was Pearson in the end. Marcus nodded, his eyes distant. You're right, we both changed. And in doing so, we changed the lives of so many others. As they continued their walk, Marcus reflected on the twists and turns that had brought him to this point. The daily humiliations he had endured, the unexpected revelation of Pearson's condition, the leap of faith that had transformed both their lives. He thought about the lessons he had learned, about patience, about seeing the potential for good in others, about the power of forgiveness and second chances. And he realized that every step of that journey, even the painful ones, had been necessary to bring him to where he was now. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow across the park, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that there would always be challenges ahead, new obstacles to overcome, but he also knew that he had the strength, the support, and the conviction to face them. With Emily by his side, with the memory of Pearson guiding him, and with the knowledge that their work was making a real difference in people's lives, Marcus felt ready for whatever the future might hold. As they turned to head home, Marcus paused for a moment, looking back at the city skyline. He could almost hear Pearson's voice, gently urging him forward. With a smile, he whispered to the evening air, "We're doing it, Mr. Pearson. We're making a difference, and I promise I'll never forget to live along the way." Hand in hand with Emily, Marcus walked towards their future, carrying with him the lessons of the past and the hope for a better tomorrow. The journey that had begun with daily humiliation had led to a life of purpose, love, and the profound satisfaction of knowing that one person really could change the world. One act of kindness, one second chance, one transformed life at a time.